It's my pleasure today to have a conversation with Joe Filippo, longtime CCSA faculty member and administrator sometimes, also a professor of theater at Austin Peay University for many years. He concluded his academic career there by serving as assistant vice president for academic affairs for about 10 years and is now retired, but retains a lively interest in theater and also in the study abroad program he was once a part of. And it's a great pleasure to speak to you today, Joe.
It's good to see you, Jeff.
Excellent. I wanted to start perhaps with you recalling what it was that first got you involved in study abroad, perhaps as a student yourself or as a faculty member before CCSA, or was it CCSA that was really the first thing that got you overseas?
CCSA was really the springboard, Jeff, for my interest in study abroad. Prior to that time, yes, I had been abroad, but not to study theater. This provided me, CCSA did, or at that time CCSB, provided me an opportunity to see things from a different angle through theater, which of course was a huge interest on my part, one in which I had spent many of my formative years in school. And so my background and professional interest in that certainly was enhanced as I began to take on some study abroad activity. The nice thing about CCSB is that at that time is that it gave me a chance to study and teach in England, which of course is the cradle of English drama. There's no secret that American drama owes a huge bushelful of credits to the English theater because of its beginnings. And so that, of course, was a big thing for me. Shakespeare was something I'd always wanted to spend time seeing his haunts and just being able to get an idea of what Stratford-on-Avon was like and what Shakespeare must have experienced as a young boy when going to school back in those days. That was a big thing for me. And of course, the ability to view and perhaps apply at times at Austin Peay, where I taught, British theater production methods was, I thought, certainly enhancing. So for all of those reasons, CCSB came along at a wonderful, wonderful time for me.
Yes, and so it was as a faculty member that you first participated?
Yes, in the summer of 1991, actually Nora Beiswinger, whom you probably remember, she was the first CCSB coordinator or she was on the board of directors, I'm sure, at that time, had come to me and asked me about the possibility of teaching a theater course. And I promptly jumped on that and said, yes, I would love to try that. So Nora had a lot to do with influencing my decision to throw my hat into the ring and to see if we might do something through CCSB. I was later introduced, of course, to Mike Lambara, who was executive director at that time, and discovered him to be an ample motivator, a terrific, fair-minded person, one in whom I held a great deal of confidence. And so that was hugely helpful too in the early years as I began to gain my footing in CCSB.
Do you remember what your first time teaching was like? I mean, had you been in London that much before, or were you sort of struggling to find your feet?
Well, I had only been in London once before. That was the summer of 1965. Inga, my wife, was pregnant with our first child, Anna, at that time. And we took a little trip to London, to much of Western Europe, and ending in, no surprise, Sweden, where we spent a good deal of time with my wife's parents and other relatives. So I'd been there before, but not for the purposes of studying or teaching theater. So that of course was opened up a whole new avenue for me when CCSB called. I think so many things stand out. My first experience, the maiden voyage was, as I mentioned, summer of 1991. And Nora, by the way, was the director of that summer program in which I taught. And she was actually a co-director. Sarah, is it Johnson? Sarah?
Yes.
Yes, Sarah Johnson was also a co-director. And I found them always there, always helpful. They were warm, eager, ready to go, and helpful to me in every possible way. My class was a small one, my very first class, and that was good because I needed to get my feet on the ground. It was perfect. Most of them were traditional students. However, I did have one non-traditional student in the group, Edward Powers, and he had many of the same interests that I did. So it's no surprise that we found our way to several theaters in addition to the productions that were sponsored by CCSB for that summer. It was a delightful summer in every way. And I saw actors I'd heard about and even seen on film before, but had never seen live. Ian McKellen as Richard III that first summer. How sweet that was. John Wood in King Lear. In The Tempest, Roy Hudd played Bottom, and that was in an open air theater. It was either Regents or Holland Park, one of those two. I went to both of them that summer. And Richard Bryars on the Road, we saw in, help me with the pronunciation, Nuxle upon Tyne, Newcastle upon
Newcastle.
Newcastle, okay.
Right.
And that was really great. He was in Anton Chekhov's Uncle Vanya. So lots of good things there. And one of the happiest moments during that summer was when I went to the site of the New Globe, because in the summer of '91, they were planning it, but they had not begun building it. So I sat on the grounds and watched as Mark Rylance directed The Tempest, and that was quite a treat. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, it's fabulous how detailed your memory is of that first trip with all those remarkable performances and performers. That's wonderful.
If it were left up to my memory, Jeff, I don't know what I would remember, but I was so excited by what I had seen when I got home. I wrote it all down, and I have written down just virtually every play that I have seen in London from beginning to end.
Wow.
About 100 of them altogether. So
remarkable. Huh. And did you keep doing this summer program for a while, or when did you shift to the London winter program?
Actually, the very next teaching assignment that I had was London winter. And and from then on, really, it was pretty much London winter for me. Not particularly totally by choice, although I did enjoy it very, very much, without a doubt. But it made it a little bit easier for me to get back to what I needed to be doing at Austin P with there were a lot of things going on, and I'm in the middle of it because I was director of theater, and I needed to be there from time to time to kind of guide things. So London winter became a big deal for me.
Uh-huh. And of course, that's different because you were no longer staying in a dorm, you were staying in a hotel. And of course, London at that time of year is so festive, isn't it?
Yes, yes, indeed. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
London, I noticed in 91 that some of the theaters got actually a little bit stuffy in the summer. A little bit warm. Uh, we were we were in all types of theaters, so that might tell you something. But
I remember um, one very hot summer being at the Royal Court Theatre and the production of Three Sisters. And the actors and actresses were all in these heavy fur coats. And it was incredibly hot, and the sweat was pouring off them. And I was sitting up in the gods, of course. And everybody, all the men upstairs got so hot that we all took off our shirts. It was like an outdoor performance, but it was inside this intolerably hot theater. And whenever I hear about Three Sisters again, I sort of break out in the sweat, just
yeah,
remembering that incredible performance.
that's yeah. Three Sisters can do that. Can do
Yes,
that too.
yes.
We did a production of Three Sisters at Austin P and had a visiting professor direct that one, and that is not an easy show. It is not an easy show
Oh,
to direct, and in some instances, not always easy to see as well. But it has a lot to teach.
right.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, and in the winter program, at what point were family members of yours involved?
Oh my, Inga was involved from the get-go, and she was remarkable in assisting me. I couldn't have done it without her. There were times in the winter, you know how it is in the wintertime, Jeff, there are all kinds of things that happen, colds and people fall by the wayside. Um, and as a director of the program, I did both. Of course, I mean, I taught sometimes, other times I directed the program. But as a director of the program, it was very, very good that I had Inga there and willing to, on occasion, perhaps stay at the hotel when there were problems, so that I could deal with all of the other people who were there, who
Right.
maybe were off to Stonehenge or whatever it might be,
Yeah.
whatever it required. Um, and so she was just a huge help throughout. And we'd, it's kind of like tag team in a way.
Mhm.
Every time I think of directing the program, I think in terms of co-directing. Of course, I had other directors too. We rarely went just one, if ever. I don't think.
No,
I think we
never.
always had. Yeah.
Right. Well,
So
I had a lot of personal memories too of Inga's remarkable ability to go right into situations and help people out and reassure folks who were homesick or,
yes,
look after people who were ill. She just did a remarkable job of
she
taking up
really
any
did.
slack that had to be taken up. And she did it with such goodwill and good humor. And she was just a joy to be with.
Very gracious in all respects. Yeah. Now Joey, he married into CCSA.
That's your son?
That's my son. Uh, he met and married a young lady who, well, both of them were in the same class. They did not know one another prior to going to London. They met one another in the class for the first time, and I'll tell you, I think it must have been love at first sight. By the time we got ready to fly back to the States, uh, Joey had a seat beside her. So the
Oh
plot
dear.
thickened, and later, of course, they got married and
Oh,
two wonderful children.
oh my.
So
Did they have their honeymoon in London as a result of that?
they should have, shouldn't they? But
Yes.
I think it was Jamaica instead.
Okay. Okay.
And Anna strengthened her directing experiences. Anna did she completed her doctorate, her PhD in theater. And so that was most helpful to her she went actually on 2 London winter tours that enabled her to see quite a bit of production activity, and she gobbled it up. She loved it and brought those little nuggets of information back home with her and used it when she could. So did it impact the family? Without a doubt, yes.
Yes.
It's an emphatic yes.
Yeah. Huh. Were there any moments when being overseas was a little threatening or challenging in ways, back in the 90s and so on, when we had terrorism by the IRA and then later other kinds of terrorism? Did that ever impinge on your experiences?
Not with me, no. And none that anyone brought to me at that time when I was there in London. That did not seem to be a problem. We did have a problem of a different sort. I directed a program that was based at the Clifton Ford, at that time called the Clifton Ford. I don't think it's called that anymore. But in that particular case, I was called by the management to come see them. They needed to talk with me, and it had to do with counterfeit $20 bills that were circulating throughout the hotel. That was a little bit disconcerting to me because they claimed that they believed it was either a Spanish group or the CCSA group doing the passing the bills. And of course, I contacted Mike, and as usual, he got right on it. And he said, tell them if they find any evidence that any of our students have been involved in that, that they ought to be punished to the fullest extent of the law. That's Mike, as you know full well. He was the sort of person who would grab the bull by the horns. And so I sent that message to the staff, and that's the last thing I heard. So it sort of went away. But yes, for a little while, I was concerned about that. I think as far as more than anything else, students' health became a primary question for me, because some of them would run into problems. If just a little cold might throw them off, and in fact, it may even cause them to miss an occasional outing and that sort of thing. So those we always looked for too, and tried to do whatever we could to make it work. And I think we did so with pretty decent results for the most part.
What about trips to the hospital? Did you have many to emergency rooms?
I did have, I'd say maybe a handful, half dozen maybe, trips to the hospital over the years. But when you consider whatever it was, 20 years or so, that's not too bad. Too bad.
No.
Because that's a lot of students when you think about it.
Yes.
The winter program usually consisted of about 250 to 300 students.
It could be as high as that.
Yeah. And so it's, I'd say that's pretty good. We did well.
Absolutely. What about other students after the program expressing their feelings of how the program and your teaching of it had an impact on their lives or their academic careers? Were there examples of that you can recall?
We always received very high marks. I know that. They seemed to appreciate what our efforts and what we were attempting to do. And we had some of them who went on, not necessarily because of us, likely not, but you never know how one might contribute to another person's future. Jolynn Pope, for example, became an attorney, first an attorney, and then I think a judge in the state of Texas. And we had another who became a nurse at Vanderbilt in an important position there. And just different people going other places. And then occasionally some of them would return and say, hey, this really made a difference. And when they did that always, you know what it's like. It feels great. It feels better than accomplishing something for yourself. To me, there's something great about being able to help others.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh. Any other memories of your times overseas, or would you want to move on to your experience on the CCSA board?
Well, another memory that I have to tell you about has to do with administrative assistant, and that's Robin Byerly is the one with whom I work the most. And she was always bright and innovative and very, very charming. And what I liked most about her work is that she managed to be able to find the kinds of tickets, theater tickets, that Mickey and I wanted, because we were always fretting over, oh, are we going to be able to get what we want? Because that's integral to what we'll be teaching. And we wanted it to be right. And I don't know how she managed to do it. I'm sure she made a lot of calls to make that work, but she was the queen of theater tickets as far as I'm concerned. And
yes.
And she also got us out of one or two nasty situations involving coaches when coaches failed, and managed to help us out there. I have a story about Robin. She came down to, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it had to do with a meeting in Nashville of CCSA. And Inga and I invited her to spend the night here in Clarksville, which is not far from Nashville, just outside. And she accepted. That night, we had the world's worst thunderstorm. I mean, thunder and lightning. King Lear didn't have it as bad as we had it that evening. And Robin, she was upstairs. She had the whole upstairs to herself, and we were downstairs. And it was, I think, about 2 a.m. A big clap of thunder virtually knocked me out of bed. I thought, I better go see if Robin is making it okay. So I went to the foot of the stairs, and I looked up, and then came a huge lightning bolt, and I saw Robin sitting on the top step with her elbows on her knees and her chin in her hands and her eyes as big as saucers.
Oh my
I'll
goodness.
never forget it. I'll never forget it. But she weathered that storm as she did all the other storms that we tossed her way. So
yeah, that's a very good image for Robin, who's survived many a moment like that we threw up over the years for her to solve. Remarkable.
That's right. But we've been blessed with wonderful board members. When it came to the business of getting down to brass tacks and dealing with matters, some of which are not so savory, perhaps, but you have to in board meetings. That's what some board meetings are for. I discovered that we had very special people there. I think Mike certainly chose very, very wisely, because I assumed that he had a lot to do with many of them, especially later, I guess. But because I did not know his predecessor, I did not meet him, so I can't. But I've enjoyed my association with Ron Cello,
Yes.
And Jim Flynn and Connie Baird and Jeff Williams,
Mm.
whose whose line I will never forget. This is the most memorable moment in the history of CCSA boarddom that I can think of. When Mike was talking with the board about his future with CCSA, and it was rather difficult to converse in ironclad terms, virtually impossible. And we were kind of hem-hawing about back and forth. And eventually you stated, oh so well, young man, what are your intentions? And with that, the entire board just broke up. It was a great moment, a great statement, well timed. And I remember that as though it was yesterday. It was,
That's funny. That's funny. I remember doing that and thinking, it was like a young man coming to my house. I wasn't certain whether he was going to want to marry the daughter or not. So,
right, exactly,
on, get
exactly,
it out there.
exactly. And everybody caught it at the very moment you pitched it out there, and we all had a nice laugh, including Mike.
Yes. Although I'm not sure he actually did come clean at the time, but he knew that we wanted him to. Yeah, that was a troubled time when we weren't sure where the program, where the organization would actually evolve.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. Yeah, but I guess for me, that bespeaks the kind of unity that we had as a group. It was the sort of thing that enabled us to get along not on a short-term basis, but over the long haul.
Right.
People working together with one another and knowing that it's okay to have a laugh every now and then too.
Right.
You have to do that too.
Yeah. And it was fun, wasn't it, to that so many members of the board were also people you'd worked with in London or in other places, and it was a bit like a homecoming to see them again on a regular basis like that.
Absolutely, a joy, a true joy to see these people again, and I miss them. I do miss them today, even. All that time. Good friends, I think.
Yes. And so if you had to summarize what it was that the importance that CCSB and A had in your life and in the lives of your students, what would you say?
Oh my, I think probably it has impacted me certainly in a couple of ways. One is in my professional life, it has made me a better director at that time. It made me a better director and teacher because I learned so much over the years being there. And secondly, I think it made me a better administrator, Jeff. I think it helped me in that role, especially when I directed programs, dealing with people, getting an understanding of what I can do, what works, what doesn't work. I think that all helped. So in toto, I think, wow, it made quite a difference for me.
In both, as you say, your theatrical directing and also in your academic management career.
That's right. Yeah, the administrative aspect where, as I went into to academic affairs, hugely helpful there too. Just on getting an understanding of working with people in a way that is different from working with a stable of actors within a rather safe environment, if you will. Um, not, not that CCSA was unsafe, but it certainly provided challenges that,
Yeah.
we did not get on campus at times. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And as far as your institution was concerned, your participation was not a drawback for your professional advancement. Was it seen as an enhancement and something that you could put on your vita without fear that it would be seen as a diversion from traditional activities? How did that work at Austin Peay?
Oh, it enhanced without doubt. It was viewed as a plus. Yes. And I did it with great pride because I know, and I think that the administration over the years also knew uh, that CCSA was a good, solid, strong organization, and that you could count on them, and they're reliable, and that forces everyone who works for CCSA in whatever capacity
Yes.
to toe the line and to make it right, to make things
Yeah.
work right.
Right.
So I've always enjoyed my association with CCSA. It's
Mhm.
just been a great opportunity for me, and one that just I still feel today just sort of fell into my lap. One of those fortunate things that
Yes.
can
Yeah.
occur.
And among the faculty at Austin Peay, was your example a persuasive one, and you found other faculty interested in doing programs and eventually filling in when you no longer were able to do that?
Absolutely, absolutely. We had several people. Um, Carlene, I think, succeeded me when I stepped down uh, from the board, and then after Carlene came Mickey. And of course, Mickey uh, has has been steadfast with it, and I know Carlene enjoyed it. I still see her from time to time, and she's getting ready to preside over the Retirees Association. It's called APSURA, APSU RA, the Retirees Association for Austin Peay.
I see.
And I think she relished the idea of being involved with it for as long as she was able. She had a lot of things going on, and yeah, because she that's the way that's her nature. She loves to be involved in
Mhm.
many things. Yeah.
Good. Anything else you wanted to add before we end this recording?
I don't think so. I think only that I'm most appreciative of the opportunity that was afforded me back in 1990 when you people did not know who I was, and didn't uh, didn't worry about it. You knew that
Right. I
you
think,
took. It was one of those things, where you never know exactly how things are going to turn out. It could have been a one summer stand, as they say, but um, the marriage of good thoughts among many created much more than that.
yeah, great. Well, thank you very much.